Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel, and I want to do this video as like a follow-up from my live match that I did earlier in the week. Now, on that video I was using a pellet waggler like setup for mugging fish. So I was casting at fish and I was also casting tight to an island or far bank, but it was an island sort of 20-25 metres away, probably 25 metres away. And I just wanted to talk to you because I was using the water wagglers. Now, water wagglers are nothing necessarily new, they've been around for quite a long time. Not claiming this is like the first ever video about them or anything like that, because it certainly isn't. But a few people asked me about the setup I use, the floats themselves, how I set them up, how I rig them up, what line and rods and everything I use. So I thought, what I should start doing is after these live matches, do like a follow-up video so we can actually take a closer look at the tactics, maybe the rigs that we've used, maybe the bait we've used. Just pick something out that I feel like was important from that match and then do a standalone video on it. And I thought that the water waggler thing was so interesting. A lot of people like to use them. They're very popular now, but you rarely see any big videos on them because, let's be honest, the tackle companies don't want you using them because you can't buy them in tackle shops with a nice whoever's logo on it. But you can buy them from fisheries, tackle shops, eBay. They are out there. So water wagglers, what are they? As the name suggests, they are a beautiful little float that is loaded with water. So there's no loading on it, there's no brass loading on it, there's no, you don't need shot for it. Just a brilliant little float. And I remember the first time I ever got my hands on these was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And it was like Des Ship gave me one and chucked it out, and I couldn't believe how well it fished, how well it casted, how well it didn't dive. And I was like a bit obsessed with them ever since. And they've become like a must-have float for if you're a pellet waggler angler or you just want to fish for carp with a float. These are ideal. So what are the benefits firstly about the water waggler? Well, then we'll talk about the setup, the actual where you get the floats from, etc. So firstly, the water waggler is really short, and the benefits are that they, for whatever reason, the way the water is loaded in there, they fly exactly where you want them to go. Like if you see a fish cruising by or you've got an island to chuck to, you chuck one of them and it will go where you point it. Not like a lot of pellet wagglers have like loadings on and they'll veer off, or they'll you've all had it, even the best ones, you chuck them out and they maybe like veer off to one side ever so slightly, or in the worst case you get like a total boomerang. These don't do that at all. So that's advantage number one. Accuracy when you chuck out one of these is fantastic. Second point to make is how little they dive. So they hit the water, and because of that air bubble that's trapped in there, they sort of don't even go, they just sit there like that. So you don't get any diving or anything like that. It's a very inconspicuous float on that front, and again, it doesn't make much noise when it hits the water either. Don't get me wrong, there's some days where you do want a bit of noise when you're fishing waggler for carp, but a lot of the time now, the fish are under quite a lot of pressure. A float like that is exactly what you need. So that's the water waggler. Now, very simple to use, very simple to set up. And one thing that I wanted to show you is these different ones that I've got. Now, Terry Winston makes these. Now, he's a match angler from the Midlands, and he sort of fishes Boddington, Meadowlands, the Midlands, Clattercoat, the Midlands sort of bigger venues. Fish pellet waggler for years and years as Terry, and he makes them and sells them on the bank. I'm sure if you contacted him on Facebook, he would let you know where to get his floats from. And that, I would say, is the traditional water waggler, that size. I've seen them made by loads of different people. I've made some myself. Very simple, perfect for sort of mugging, short range, just a good float. But what I hadn't seen before were these. And Terry makes these, and they're a much bigger water waggler, like a real, like twice the thickness, just a much bigger float. And trust me, if you chuck one of them out, it's like you've got a bomb on. So at the Glebe, for instance, when some days you've got to chuck right tight to the far bank, a float like this is absolutely sensational. So what do I mean by that? If you, like, again, I mentioned like balsa floats are not too bad, but certainly some of the floats that you buy in the tackle shop, chuck them to the far bank and they'll just veer off or dive too deep or hit the water and go under, or you don't get that like beautiful cast that you need. Because remember, the shelf on these fisheries is quite short. You know, you chuck up to the far bank at the Glebe and you want your bait like brushing the grass. You know, your hook bait wants to be flicking past your float and hit and like landing next to the grass. And you can only do that if you've got the right float on, because if you're worried about it veering off and that, you just don't cast with any conviction. Whereas with one of them, trust me, it's like you've got a bomb on. So you just send it across, it goes perfectly straight. You've got plenty of weight in the float. It hits that far bank. You can clip up, hits the far bank, it clips and it plops in, and you can see your pellet like brushing the grass on the far bank. Honestly, I put it on in that live match and I was like gobsmacked. Just a brilliant, brilliant float. So they're the Wagglers, 2 sizes. I would urge you to get both. They're brilliant for the mugging that we did on that day. They were absolutely perfect. But for chucking across on that day, I also used that one, which made the job so much easier. So 2 different sizes, and they're the water Wagglers. Absolutely brilliant. If you haven't got any in your box, you need to get some. They're not the be all and end all of pellet waggler fishing though. I must stress that. I found that if you, to be fair, I've not tried this one on the bigger version on the more open lakes, your Boddingtons and whatnot, when there's a good wind on. I've only ever had them in my armoury until Terry got me some of them ones. So I've only ever had these in my armoury, the smaller ones. And I found if you do have a strong wind or a skimmy wind or anything like that, sometimes they skip along a little bit. And that's where, you know, your more traditional pellet wagglers, your balsas, your crystals, that kind of thing, things like this are probably a bit more stable in the water and let you fish a bit longer. You can hang it out there and it'll sit there a bit longer. So just wanted to make that caveat. It is not just all about water wagglers. You do need other floats in your armoury, but on a day like the Glebe where it was calm, a lot of fish cruising around, they are, in my opinion, the only floats you need. So moving on to the actual setup itself, because it is simple, but there are a few things that I just wanted to discuss with you. Firstly, when it comes to rods, there's all different like rod sizes, rod lengths that you can buy, 10 foot right up to 13 foot in the float rod department. I don't own any 12-foot Waggler rods. If I was in the market today, I might look into getting 12-footers, but I don't do enough pellet Waggler fishing for me to justify getting any more rods. And I found that these 11-foot Monster X 11-foot pellet Waggler rods have been fantastic for me. I've used them for years, ever since they first come out. And you know, when you just get a rod and it just suits your fishing, that's exactly what this is. It's never let me down. I've got 2 of them. They're just brilliant rods and they're pretty cheap as well. So let's just unwrap this and just show you how I've actually set the rods up. Just an absolutely fantastic bit of kit. Let's get it out of there. And it just proves that, you know, you don't always have to have the most expensive rods and stuff, but if you find a rod that actually works for you, then it's worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. And this action, I would love to replicate it with even better carbon, because it would be a fantastic rod. So let me just grab that without it getting all messed up. So I'll just take that off the tip and butt protector. So this is actually still set up from that day. And I like a really simple setup for pellet waggler. I know there's much better anglers than me who have mastered the pellet waggler, who like all sorts of things on their rig, but I don't do enough of it to truly specialise into it. So whenever I think, oh, I need a pellet waggler today, I just need something that's simple to use, doesn't tangle, I can swap my floats. I just need something that's reliable, strong, good, easy to use, and that's what this setup allows me to do. I can just pick this rod up and go pellet waggler fishing. I don't have to worry about anything, and I think that is so important. I can change depths with it, I can change floats with it. It's strong, it's simple, it never tangles, and I think that is so important. So 11-foot rod, like we mentioned. And then on the reel, I actually have 5 pound detection on it. So 5 pound detection, more than strong enough for your waggler fishing, and it's also light enough, as in the diameter's thin enough. So when you're casting, you know, this smaller float, it works perfectly. If I was to go up to maybe 8 pound reel line, it would just be too much drag on them smaller floats. It probably would be fine with the bigger ones, but when you're using the smaller ones, you do want that sort of 5 pound reel line. Incidentally, some people drop down to the 4 pound, which is 0.18, or even 3 pound, which is 0.16. And the line's plenty strong enough, don't get me wrong, but I just prefer the peace of mind that 5 pound gives me, and that is 0.20 for anyone interested. Loaded to the lip, very important when you're fishing with wagglers. You don't want any resistance on your reel. You want that float to come off there nice and easy. where this actually probably differs, or a little bit differs to maybe another setup, I actually use a meter, just there, I can feel the stop knot in my fingers, about a meter, meter and a half, 1.2 meters, something like that, of 8 pound as a little shock leader. Now that's, I use the Albright knot to connect that to my reel line, and it's not for strength and it's not for durability or anything like that. It's purely because I like to use like a swivel on the line that is secured in position with float stops. That's how I prefer to do it. It allows me to change my depth. It allows me to a nice, strong, simple setup that is reliable. Like I say, I've tried all sorts of setups over the years for pellet waggler fishing, and for me that just cuts down any hassle. That sort of, I'm going to put my hand there. That one stop above, two below. But I found that if you put them stops straight onto 5 pound line, the diameter isn't there to truly grip them gripper stops. So just that little bit of 8 pound line, just them stops go on that 8 pound line and fit on there securely. So when you're, especially with that float, it's not so bad with the small one, but with that bigger one or the bigger balsas that we carry, when you're whacking it out there, it's like it can slip and you don't want that. So that 8 pound bit of line, you could even use 10 pound. Just gives me that extra secure. I mean, look, you can barely move that. It's fantastic. So that's my setup. I've got, like I say, one above, two below, a nice little swivel in there. There's loads of different snaps. I prefer the pellet waggler types with the round sort of swivel. I prefer that for my floats, but I must admit I'm not that fussy, but they're the ones I've got. So it's simplicity in itself, really simple. And then down there I've just got, I don't know, 1.5 foot, something like that, down to a loop, to which I loop my hook length on. I don't have a little micro swivel to attach my hook length to or anything like that. I just find it's just something else to tangle and worry about. I want this to be as simple and straightforward as possible, and it has worked for me time and time again. Hook length wise, on the day at the Glebe I used 0.20 exact. It's really strong and reliable, but I would not hesitate to go up to the 234, which is 0.23, which is almost 10 pound in breaking strain. If we were really having it, I would go up to that. 0.20 is a nice middle ground though, and it matches up perfectly with this setup. I like to have a relatively long hook length of about 2 foot. And then on the hook, I use a size 14 Camasan animal feeder. I speak about this hook all the time. It is amazing. Like I caught 127 pound there or there. I caught, I don't know, 6 or 7 on the pole, but definitely caught a dozen fish on the Waggler that day. And that hook is on there still, and it is razor sharp still. It is just a brilliant, brilliant hook. Very, very underrated. To be honest, I think a lot of people don't even know it exists, which is such a shame because it's a fantastic hook. It's just a beautiful, beautiful hook. It stays sharp, it's strong, it's a lovely shape. The only thing you need to be aware of, and the reason I go for a 14, is that the animal's actually quite an old hook, the original animal, and these are like a PTFE coated version. It's one of them that the sizes are still a little bit small. They're almost like a traditional sizing. So like a 14 is more like a 16 in other hooks. The 12 is like a 14 and so on and so forth. Like the 16 in this is like a tiny little 18. So just be aware of that. They're actually quite small for the size. So a 14 in this is like a 16 if you were to use a KKH or something like that. So that's it. I just have a little band on the bottom. Nice and simple, really simple setup. It just works. Like I say, it's all about the float really. You know, the details are that them floats are absolutely spectacular. Simple setup. For me, unless you are an absolute pellet waggler wizard, I just don't believe you need anything more complicated than this. I'm sure there are reasons why you would do, but for me and for most of you guys watching, I'm sure you're just pellet waggler fishing a few times a year. You just want something that you can rely on, cast out, not getting any tangles. This is the way for me. Really simple, 11-foot rod, nice 5 pound reel line, get the right floats, you're onto a winner. So that's, if you like this, I think that this is something we could do on a lot of the live matches, maybe follow it up with, like I say, it could be rigs, it could be bait, it could be tackle, you name it. Something that I'd love for you guys to sort of influence a little bit. But I thought that would be a really good video to do today. Have a look at them water wagglers, how I used them. One thing I will say is about the cast. I don't know if you noticed, I was like punching it low. I think that's really important. When you're pellet waggler fishing, you kind of want your line to be dead straight to your float. So when you chuck it out, if you get a bite quick, which sometimes happens, you know, it hits the water and you get a bite. If you've got a big bow that's formed, which often happens if there's a crosswind or your float's too light and you don't quite, you know, you're not quite thingy, you've kind of got to do a low punch, so you're keeping that bow minimal. You know, you're not getting a massive, if you do a big loopy cast like that, you floated land and then you get this big loop of line, and by the time you get your bite, you strike, missed it. You're trying to keep that trajectory sort of quite low, fire it out low to the water, you float lands, you're in straight contact with it, and you'll see you can whack into them. That technique's really important. You see like your anglers like Paul Hollands and stuff, fantastic at it. They just keep that trajectory dead low, perfect contact, straight line, and it just makes a massive difference. So that's it. We barely fed anything on the day. We pinged an odd 8mm pellet over, but it made no difference at all. And I used, just as a quick final point, I actually used a 6mm pellet in the band as opposed to an 8mm. I think when you're mugging, I think the 6mm is the right size. I think sometimes when they're sort of mooching around, I think the bigger pellet maybe hits them on the side of the face and misses an odd bite and stuff. I've just had loads of success using a 6mm over the years. That is one of the famous pasty pale 6mm that I had on there, but I also caught on a red one as well. So maggots are worth trying as well. I know a lot of people don't consider maggots because they've got a pellet waggler on, but trust me, a bunch of maggots can be just as effective. And then also, if you are mugging on a venue that allows it, meat can be fantastic as well, or even a bit of pepperami. So they're the little details. I thought you'd like that as a little follow-up, and hopefully it goes down well and we can do a lot more of them this summer. So thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next video.